So, hello to everyone watching. I want to start by saying thank you to Ngozi Odita, Kene Unwe, and the whole Africa Next team for this opportunity and for their work. And I'll introduce myself. I'm Ifeanyi Awachie. I'm Chief Curator of Africa SALON UK, which is a global contemporary African arts festival. Most recently, we worked with collaborators such as 154 Contemporary African Art Fair, who of course have different editions of their fair in London, where I'm based, New York, and Marrakesh. And also collaborators like Aiba Magazine's Mystique Afrique Festival in Toronto. I also work as a curator in the contemporary art world here in London. And I'm really excited to present and moderate the Future of Festivity, where we're going to explore the work of event and festival organizing in Africa in the present and imagine possibilities for the post-COVID-19 future. I have invited to join us Nandi and Dlepu of Mamakashaka, Laranjeira of Mafalala Festival, and Nadu Placca of the Zoo XYZ. Nandi, Ivan, and Nadu are going to discuss how the pandemic has affected their work. We'll look at their current approaches to bringing people together to experience arts and culture, with particular attention to opportunities afforded by social media. And we'll also look toward the future. And it looks like we may have just lost Nandi, so let's make sure she's here, probably just refreshing. In the meantime, hello everybody in the chat, everybody watching. Hope everyone's been enjoying the conference so far. Glad it's been a fun day too. Really good to hear.
I think she lost audio, so had to log out and log back in.
Yeah, okay, let's see. I'm hoping Kenna can help. But in the meantime, what I'm gonna do is introduce Nadu and Ivan, and then after I introduce each of you, I'm gonna ask you to tell us a bit about your work to get us started. I hope that sounds good.
So good.
Nice, nice. And so Ivan, I'm actually gonna start with you. So Ivan Laranjeira is director of Mafalala Festival. Mafalala Festival is a month-long multidisciplinary cultural festival held in the historic neighborhood of Mafalala, Maputo, or as Ivan calls it, the Brooklyn of Maputo. Mafalala Festival features performances, for example, by the traditional women's dance group, Dance Tufe, walking tours led by Ivan himself and his company Iverca, a mural painted over the course of the festival by local artists, and much more. The festival draws its identity from Mafalala as a locality, but it also aims to present audiences with a fusion of cultural expressions from around Mozambique and around the broader African diaspora. And Ivan also recently launched the Museu Mafalala, which is the first community museum launched in Mozambique in recent years. So that's a huge accomplishment. The museum's aim is to archive and teach Mafalala's cultural heritage. And in addition to exhibitions on the history of Maputo and so many other subjects, the museum offers dining and residences. I met Ivan in Colombia in 2017 as part of a working group called Afare Nova, which is a transnational expert working group for the development of the African diaspora. So Ivan, I would love it if you could just tell everyone a bit about your work in your own words.
Well, thank you very much for the platform and for this invitation, Ife. It is a great pleasure to be here. I see we've changed. Usually it's ladies first, but this time around it was gentlemen first. So
it's alphabetical order.
I'm glad. I consider myself a feminist, and we start to see this change in the way things go, and I'm glad to see that. It's also one of our flagships for this young generation, apart from fighting for for the industry and so on. Well, basically the work that we do in Mafalala, it's focused on the cultural heritage of this area. Mafalala is one of the oldest neighborhoods of Maputo City, and it has contributed a lot for the history of the country, from the struggle for the independence as well as the post-colonialist period, and it has contributed also in forms of politics as well as sports and culture. Hence the whole narrative of being the capital of Maputo, or the equivalent to all of the slums and peripheral areas that we have in the world, that kind of like share the same background and the same idea of struggle, and arts and culture being the main element to this transformation to take place. So out of this narrative, we created a community development program, because this is an informal settlement that we're talking about. And out of that background, we created a community development program that looks into different aspects of the community from a cultural point of view. So creating jobs and income generating, and it's a very live community in terms of arts and performances and artists and so on. So the whole idea that we put it together was to create a route that we call the Mafalala Walking Tour, that talks about the history of the place. And we came to a point where we needed also to work on the perception that people had in regard to Mafalala. Usually people think of these places as being dangerous areas, and the areas are also neglected, they don't look good, the news are always presenting the bad side of it. So we thought, well, we should do something about it to bring back the good side of Mafalala, and that's how the festival came about, with the idea to combine the positive aspects of what Mafalala had to show and what the community actually represented, and its relevance in the growth of the city as well as to the narrative of the country in general. And throughout the years, we've been pushing on the festival. We are supposed to do our 12th edition this year. Hopefully the whole Corona thing allows us to do a live event instead of a virtual one. And through this work, we also came to the idea of producing the museum, because we use the community as a live scene museum where people could actually see everything, all the stories, and see and get in touch with the community and see all the things that we're talking about. But there was missing a place where you could actually interpret and understand how it was in the past, and also a place that you could prospect an idea of the future, and make this dialogue between the three moments of the history, and kind of like work also as a creative hub. Because when you look at spaces like this, usually you don't have a lot of cultural infrastructure or equipment that can support the idea of working on arts and culture, and the artists just produce with the tools and the elements that they have there, and usually they don't perform for the very same community. They always go outside to present their work or to sell the stuff that they produce. So we kind of like thought towards the community and inwards the community, what we need to do in terms of platforms for the very same community, not just to produce, but also to enjoy and benefit from what is being produced, and being able to generate and contribute to the value chain of the whole space in terms of culture and arts. So in a nutshell, that's basically what we do, and we've been working for about 11 years now. And I consider myself like a community broker, like a cultural manager that touches on different areas and different perspectives of the cultural aspects, not just arts, but also on the cultural heritage, the tangible aspect of it, and also discussing how the city, the urban space, is perceived from an urban perspective, and how now gentrification also impacts on the spaces, and the places of historical value are kind of losing their sense and the perception that people have. Yeah.
Thank you, Yvonne. And so now I'm going to Nadu. Nadu Placca is founder of an and experience architect at the Zoo, which is an events and experiential agency. The Zoo engages brands to create experiences for audiences in the UK, various countries across Europe, Ghana, South Africa, Nigeria, Senegal, Japan, and the US. So Nadu has worked with a broad range of high-profile clients, including Wande Cole, Alicia Keys, and Sierra. And she's worked with a number of prestigious arts and culture institutions here in London as well. I came across Nadu's work when I learned that she was the event management mastermind behind last year's Afrochella. And in addition to helping run the Year of Return edition of this massive festival, Nadu has also worked with Afropunk. So Nadu, I'd love for you to tell us a bit about your work, particularly about what it was like to work on Afrochella and your other work with festivals.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the introduction, and lovely to hear, Ivan, the work that you're doing in Mozambique. It's amazing, and I want to speak to you afterwards. And it's funny that you say, what were you doing? Past tense, because right now it's nothing. My background has been events for over 12 years, and in the last 4 years, we've started to branch out into a lot more international work. So I'm very Ghanaian. I'm half Ghanaian, half British. So in the last 2 years, I ended up going back to Ghana to put on an event out there we did with Fuse ODG Tina Fest, which was the first of its kind in a new venue, something that was completely transformed. And there I had an amazing opportunity to meet the Afrochella team. And we were able to get involved with them last year from a consultation perspective about the growth of the festival, what it looks like, what it feels like, people's experiences, and how to navigate that. And this year was actually the start of new projects that I've taken on full management of the festival, looking at branching out to other regions across the continent, looking at different countries we can tap into to bring an element of the experience to. So it's all a big change. But one of the things that we're also working on is an exchange program. So we deliver event management, stage management, marketing, and hospitality training. So we're hoping that this year, because it's not likely that we'll be doing, the big scale festival international as it was, that we can look at working with locals and delivering training, getting people accredited, so that come next year when we're ready to really hit off with a bang, people are working to a certain standard, empowered, and have the opportunity to be part of the exchange program and take their skills to other countries. So last year we were successful enough to take 2 of our students to come and work in Ghana, and hopefully next year we'll be able to move people around and take people from Ghana to South Africa to the UK, Ghana to the UK, etc. So yeah, it's interesting times.
Yes, very interesting. And to continue in that vein, my first question for both of you is, of course, how have the events and projects you had scheduled this year been affected by the pandemic? So we heard a bit about that from you, Nadu, but I don't know if there's more you'd like to say.
So much. I mean, I think international travel, it's one of the hardest. As it stands at present, majority of my events, I was booked up until March 2021. So if you can imagine, like flights booked, like teams booked, places, to just have everything stop and to not know the certainty of anything. And for me, it's quite difficult navigating across different countries, because every country has different rules. And with different rules comes different things that you have to adhere to. So it's being able to understand exactly the parameters that you're able to work in each country. And when the government announces what the change is, being able to jump on it with, plan of how to effectively give people experiences.
Yeah, wow. And Yvonne, what about you?
Well, most definitely. I think now with the museum, we got tremendously affected as well, because we have like a running program with several events scheduled, and we've been closed for 2 months now. So we had to cancel all of the events we had on our schedule. And aside from that, we also connected with a series of events in the city of Maputo and also in the region. One of those being ASGO, as well as Bushfire. and Ioma at Reunion Island, that most of these events got actually postponed, and Bushfire as well as Go got cancelled. So the possibility of artists circulating, Mozambican artists as well as other artists from the region and other sides of the world, also got to be cancelled due to the pandemic. And we don't know exactly when this situation is going to end, so it makes it even more difficult for us to understand what's going on, and also to generate income, because that's how we make our living.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I'm curious to hear how both of you have used social media, if at all, to adapt to the situation. So if you have any online activity going on now, I'd love to hear kind of what you have in store, what you have in process. So either of you can take that question if you'd like.
Well, in our case, we've always, it's funny enough that we have always been very active in terms of social media, and we always use social media as our main way to promote our events, you know, mostly on a marketing perspective. And we've been doing that for the time that we've been around. And lately we using virtual walking tour of Mafalala. I guess I've been sending you stuff in Portuguese, Ifeanyi.
Yeah.
It's time you learn some of that.
Yeah.
Which is one of the ways we've been connecting, using the social media, using WhatsApp, using Telegram, and also Facebook and Instagram to promote what Mafalala is about, and creating content to the museum. So we currently working on having a virtual exhibition of the museum so that people can go on a tour and understand what the museum is about, as well as preparing a virtual art, an artistic exhibition as well for the gallery in the museum. So these three things are the main things that we are working on. And it's a way, in a way, it's not so good because we don't have that physical interaction with the people, especially with the community, which is the main target or the first public for the community museum that we run in Mafalala. But in the other side, it allows us to have a broader audience. So we're no longer talking Mozambique or Maputo or even Mafalala. We're talking the world, and people can actually assess and get to learn what we're doing and things like that. So that is a good and bad thing, a bad side to it, to the thing.
I think there's a lot of positives there, but absolutely
Yeah.
positives and negatives. Thanks, Yvonne.
Yeah.
And what about you, Nadu?
No, nothing. So for me,
Yep. Simple.
my work is based on like experiences like one-to-one or, you know, human contact, anything. I've taken this time to just mentally zen myself, take time, because it's very rare, like having a schedule that was so packed out in that respect, to just have some downtime. So just taking time to myself. I think we're going to look at doing one of our training courses online. So we do a one-day workshop. So we'll look at a half day. So we'll look at doing that online about people that are interested in getting into events. But no, taking it easy right now.
Fabulous. Yeah, wow. So the pandemic has completely kind of stopped your external activity, but you're using the time very generatively in other ways. So that's amazing. And that relates to my next question. And by the way, we're still working on getting Nandi back into the chat, the conversation. So hopefully she'll join us shortly. But in the meantime, the pandemic has really shown us the importance of gathering, as you both said. And so if you had to explain to someone the importance of the work that you do, given the current situation, how would you explain it?
Oh. Well, I think from my point of view, and basically on what we do, we all being African countries, and all of us are very young nations. And I think one of the elements of that process is precisely understanding our history and the different parts of the history and how important each of these pieces kind of is to what we are today, and helps us to shape and to build our sense of identity and the self-esteem of being Mozambican or being African in general. So I guess the work that I do, it's very important in that perspective. I come from a country where very few people know exactly the details of our history, and the history is very much European-centered rather than African-centered. So the discussion that we bring with Mafalala is precisely to change the focus and to change the side or the perspective of what we do. And it's quite interesting again, because it's done from a young people perspective as well, someone that understands, who someone that didn't live at that time, that didn't understand what colonialism is, tries to break it down for younger people and to children, and as well as for older people and adults. So it's quite challenging. And I think it's nowadays, I guess, is one of the most important things to be self-assured of who you are. And for me, understanding who we are, we need to understand our roots. We have to understand where we come from. Only then we can have a clear idea of the path ahead of us, and we can change and transform the future.
Amen. I'm preaching today. I love it. Nadu, what about you, speaking on the importance of your work?
Nandi!
And we have Nandi.
Hey, we're missing you, Nandi.
You made it.
That's
Welcome.
Oh, welcome. So let's give you a second to settle in, Nandi. We're just talking about the fact that the pandemic has shown us the importance of gathering. And I think in the arts, often our work, the importance of our work doesn't always translate to perhaps people working in other fields or with other experiences. So I've just asked everyone to talk about how they might explain the importance of their work given the current situation and how it's shown us the importance of gathering. So I'll ask Nadu to share her thoughts on that, and then I'll come back to you and we'll kind of start from the beginning with you. Does that sound good?
cool. I mean, so honestly, the emphasis on human connection has really been renewed during this time. I think as things are taken away from us, like in any other context, we begin to appreciate them even more. I know from our side, we've been inundated with like messages of like, we miss Feel Good, we miss Pantone, if we have one more. And honestly, like what this has like, and for us, we've been like looking at, it's not just about gathering, it's like distilling it down to like community, distilling it down even further to family. And really what this pandemic has done has really just like honed in on the things that are really the most important, which is not the long hours that we were spending on our respective jobs and away from our families and our immediate community. So I think what's also really interesting for me is not just the emphasis on the importance of gathering, but the types of gatherings that we're talking about as well, which I think is going to affect the business of festivity moving forward dramatically.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And maybe I'll just quickly say for people who aren't familiar with your work, Nandi, that Nandi is creative and managing director of Mamakashaka, who aim to change the landscape of South Africa's creative economy by building platforms and creating opportunities for creative entrepreneurs. And so Nandi alluded to some of these projects, but Mamakashaka run the Feel Good series, which is a Johannesburg-based monthly day party and live performance platform for eclectic music. They also run Umi, our music festival, which is a music and lifestyle festival, taking over spaces to present music, film, and art, and featuring an audience curated lineup. Pantone Sundays, a monthly color-themed fashion party pop-up in Joburg, Cape Town, and soon coming to Durban. And many other projects. So, well, we don't know when it's going to come to Durban now, but in the near future, we hope. So yeah, so thank you so much, Nandi. So glad you're here. And so I want to bring it back to Nadu now. So that same question about just how do we communicate, or how are we communicating the importance of our work now that the pandemic has shown us how important it is?
I think kind of what Ivan and both Nandi said, it's realizing, I think especially what I found is, you know, the extent of my work was international travel. Like that is the furthest thing that's away from us right now. And I think when you do bring it down to everyday living, it's, you know, being in the same place with the same people day in, day out, it's a lot mentally, physically, just trying to get through it. And I think what I've realized is that the work that I do in terms of creating these experiences support people in so many different ways that you don't realize. So when people do come to events and have those experiences, it's great because when you do get to your events, you know, in full form and in live, you see how people are really experiencing them, but you don't really realize the importance of that until it's completely taken away from you, like now. And it's now that we have to think, well, how can we find another way to create these experiences? So there's one-to-one experiences that you may have in your household. You know, my favorite thing every 2 weeks is going to the supermarket. Like that's another experience. But, you know, we take something from different people and different visuals and different sounds and different, you know, enhanced, like there's no alcohol in South Africa right now and cigarettes. Like that's another thing that contributes to this experience. So for me, it's been really interesting to completely taken away. And one thing my daughter said in the beginning was, oh, you know, this will be really exciting and interesting. We're part of history. And now we're part of it. It's not as exciting.
Well said. All right. So we've started talking about them, but tell us more, everyone, about the challenges you're currently facing or anticipating having to face after the pandemic, and maybe about some lessons that you're learning that you'll take forward into the future. So maybe Nandi, you'd like to start since we've heard a bit from the others. Yeah.
So I think from our end, so as you like summarized, my whole business has been on bringing people together in real life. That's been like our primary source of income these last 3 years. And that's like gone. Like it's really gone. We found ourselves in new terrain. And what's interesting for me as a business is that I found that I had to revisit the why, the intention behind the business and the intention behind each one of the platforms, because what the pandemic has done has called into question how these things are manifested. It hasn't called into question our intention and our reason for being, you know. All it's done is called into question how those things are manifested. So if we as Feel Good Series champion, you know, celebrating or creating a platform for emerging DJs and live and musicians, now we have to ask ourselves, how else can we choose to do that? How else are we able to do that rather? And so for me, it has been about looking across all our platforms and the business and just really getting back to the intention and the why to help us pivot. And like, I think that's like the word, like of your business pivoting. How do you plan to pivot? But really, and because what we're starting to see is there's an influx of content. There's an influx of inauthentic content. There's an influx of poor quality content. And the thing is, we are, I feel like we're at a point where there's a scramble to create, there's a scramble to produce. And I have had to like tell myself to be still and acclimatize to what's going on. So I've told myself my platforms just need to do the bare minimum. So what was the original schedule before this pandemic has? And how can we fulfill this schedule in the best way possible with the restrictions that we have, and try to resist the urge to overproduce and so on and so forth. And it's been very interesting for me, like because I worry about content fatigue. There's only so many Instagram lives I can take, y'all. Like there's only so many. So I have to, and also it is about authentically showing up in those spaces. So now you have brands, you have platforms who were never engaging in conversation, whose values, those pillars were never about community or self-care or whatever. And then I just kind of have to jump onto this bandwagon, if you will. And I think that a lot of that's going to happen. And we have to be mindful of the fact that this is a marathon. You know, South Africa, Nadu, we've been predicted to have our spike in September, October. We're in this for months. So where I'm at right now is resisting the urge to overproduce and to make sure that whatever it is that we're doing, that we are showing up authentically in that space. It's quite interesting because just the other day I was in another panel, similar conversation, similar very necessary conversation, and I spoke about like me having to do like 3 things. Like first was revisit, which is what I said, like revisit the intention of the business and the platform so that we are able to pivot with authenticity. And the second was, I think it was something like reassessing our budget. A lot of us are asking ourselves the questions around how do we make more money? How do we make money? How do we bring in income? Whereas I really think right now that we should be reassessing our expenses. As individuals and as companies, we need to be looking at where we can save money, because saving money is making money. It's going to take some time before we're able to sign on sponsors because there's a lack of confidence in the market and there's free content. You know, as a music platform, it's very hard to compete with the likes of like the James Blakes and all these guys who are performing for free. They're performing for free. We have these massive brands now who are doing the stay-at-home campaigns. Everything from life insurance brands are doing like music concerts now. And it's like, how do we begin as like independent curators and community leaders begin to compete with that kind of stuff? So for me, it's about slow and steady. It's a marathon. There's going to be fatigue. People who are inauthentically showing up in the spaces won't be here 2 months from now. Because it's not their intention, it's not their purpose, it's not them, you know, truly living to their why. And I think the last thing for me was is rest. Is again like resisting the urge to like overproduce, resisting the urge to say something when you have nothing to say. You know, it's okay. Take a time out, like familiarize yourself with these new surroundings, and you know, come up with a strategy in 2 to 3 months' time. And I know that's really a hard thing to swallow, and even hard to say, considering that we're not really making much money, but we're all not making much money right now. That's the truth of the matter. We're all literally in this together. So that's been really where our headspace has been as a business and as a platform.
Well said. Thank you so much, Nandi. So Nadu and Yvonne, any thoughts?
We broke.
Yes.
I think one of the good things of being broke and being in this situation is that you also get so creative, you know.
Yep.
when you're hungry is when you hustle the most, right? So I think from my point of view, for the experience that we're going through right now, one of the main challenges that we're having is precisely to pay salaries, you know, and the human side of things. We have a team of 14 people that it's fully dependent on what's happening that is fully depending on our action in Mafalala. And we precisely, just like Nandi said, we work with people, you know, and we cannot get in touch with people right now. So it's difficult. It's been 2 months, and you start rethinking your core business as well, and how you do it, and if in future we want to continue, we need also to diversify to other areas that can still make some money in times like this. So I guess this is one of the big challenges, but it's also interesting to understand how people come together, and there is a sense of unity and supporting each other as well. That actually it's something that it's striking me the most, that idea of unity and one helping each other and things like that.
Beautiful. Nadu?
I actually forgot the question because I was in with Nandi then. Ivan had me cracking up.
I know, it was great. Yeah, so just any challenges you're currently facing and any lessons you're learning that you're going to take forward.
I mean, it's interesting because I've had a few of these talks and it's always having the same thing. And I just feel the challenges that I'm facing, as I mentioned, number one, international, have to strip back and think locally. And then from that, it's the territories that we were in. What can we do locally? Territory has its own new parameters, and it's being able to think within those boxes and being able to maneuver. One of the main things I'm doing, as I said before, like Nandi said, is rest. I am not going to overthink a situation when it is outside of my control. There's internal and there's external. So everything internal that I'm managing, I will focus on until a government of a particular region turns around and says, this is what you can do and this is the parameter. I'm going to think of a million different ideas of what I could do and jump on it, because that's not how I work. And there are people out there who are doing, different things, Instagram every day and all of these different things, and that's great. But I think one thing that I've definitely realized from this is you have to do what is right for you and at that time. And the person I am today with my hair done and I look good and fresh is not who I was yesterday, and that's okay. And it's being able to just take your time. And for me, I know how I work best. When I'm ready and I can see that things are changing and an opportunity presents itself, that's when I'm going to act. In the meantime, I'm spending time with my other half and with my daughter and just enjoying the time that we have. So yeah, it's very challenging, and it's, everyone is in the same boat. So that's, I think, the comforting thing to feel, that it's kind of like a grieving process, like emotions are high and low, and you'll think about one thing another day and go through the reins of something another day, but you just have to take one day at a time, and that's what I'm doing.
Yeah, I mean,
love it.
I want to jump. I mean, what I really liked was just even the title of this particular session, like the future of festivity. And I think on the one hand, you can look at like festivity to obviously mean festivals and big gatherings, but you can also look at its other meaning, which is like spirits, feeling festive. And I think now, we need to allow ourselves to reimagine what feeling festive and being festive looks like in the next 12 months. And once we know what that looks and feels like, that's natural in this new world, then we can start creating things for it. The truth of the matter is that we have to let go. We have to let go of what was. It's over, guys. It's legit. And really, it's about seeing how are we now going to start engaging in the world. And then, as people who are passionate about building community and bringing people together, our job is to respond.
Yes, I can see you. I can hear me though. I can hear you. I can hear you. I can hear you.
Does anyone have the conference open in another tab?
It's fine, right?
Let's see.
And all else I had opened.
Yeah. Nobody blames you for that. You really tried.
But really, and like I said, as people who are passionate about bringing people together, because for me, that is still something that brings me a lot of a fulfillment and joy. And so, but I have to wait to see what people are responding to and what technology also allows from city to city, from country to country. I mean, I'll tell you, someone asked here, I think it was John, how successfully can a virtual music concert fly? Let me tell you some of the issues. Like, we had our first Feel Good series, digital one, this past Saturday. And one of the first things was like, live DJ sets are a problem because of music publishing rights. So platforms like Instagram, like Facebook are shutting down these conversations, right? These lives. And then you also have the technology constraint, which is data and connectivity. So what you are experiencing is very different person next door is very different to the person, you know, because we're all at the mercy of how strong or how weak our Wi-Fi connections are, or if we can even afford the data. So for me, it's like these things, it doesn't work. And because of all those things, it's hard then to ask people to pay for them. It's even harder to get them started. We cannot promise quality. We cannot promise quality in that way. And so we have to figure out, there's a lot of trial and error, and there is a lot of waiting. Quite frankly, a lot of waiting. 2 months is long, it isn't. If anything, all I need is saying that people are like projecting 12 to 18 months as far as the social distancing aspect of this pandemic is concerned. Like 2 months is nothing. Let's like revisit these conversations like in 6 months' time, in 8 months' time, when we really have a better understanding of the landscape.
Absolutely.
It's quite interesting. It's interesting because I just remember the other day we were on a forum as well with the other festival producers here in Maputo, and we were thinking precisely how can we beat this social distancing and still do events. And one of the guys shared this thing about the festival in Denmark or something like that they started using some sort of drive-in system, you know. The band is on stage, they perform, and the music is broadcasted through a radio frequency, you know, so you listen to the music in your cars. So there might be a solution that way as well. And I think we really need to get creative on this one.
Even with that, Ivan, I think we can't, part of the magic of gatherings is the energy that is created by
absolutely,
and those things are either cannot or will be poorly mimicked, and that's why I'm saying like it's literally new ways, like and perhaps, you know, the future of music concerts and those type of experiences for now are done. Maybe like put on ice for now, and we need to figure out some other things. Because for me, like and there've been some great things being done and initiatives in terms of, and it feels to me more like community efforts, where you see platforms like Colors Berlin like doing like a homebred series. You've seen YouTube do the Stay at Home campaign. You saw Global Citizen. There are a couple festivals here locally that are doing stuff, and the truth of the matter is it's like the quality is so inferior to what we're used to, that it just like that connection, that thing, that energy, it just isn't there. It just isn't there. So for me, it really, we can't simply take an experience and just move it digitally. You have to rethink the whole thing, and that's going to take us some time, because we also need to catch up on what is possible with technology, and also what are people prepared to like invest in? Because at the end of the day, you know, it all comes back to the business of, you know, of entertaining, the business of these festivals, the business of these gatherings. So I don't know. Every time I have this conversation with yourselves in my mind with my 9-year-old child, I come back to the same place, which is, you know, we need to like wait, trial and error. Yeah, we're not going to solve this in 3 months. We're not going to solve it.
The thing is, I think the one thing that we definitely have as a stronger whole point than any other continent is that we have the least amount of cases that have gone on. So we're probably going to be, and in a positive way, guinea pigs in that respect of being able to do events here, because our numbers are significantly lower than anywhere else in the world. We've handled it. We've had, you know, means of being able to do it. Like when stuck in South Africa, within the first week of it being mentioned about the country being locked down, like there was hand sanitizer in places, they already started social distancing, and then when they decided to shut the borders, and those numbers have retained low levels. So I'm definitely more confident than where somewhere in the US or Europe may have to wait 18 months, that we're able to actually look at different ways of changing the experience that we give people with a much shorter time frame.
Yeah. Wow. So we have just sadly 4 minutes left. We have to finish at 6:08. And I'm loving the interaction in the chat. If anybody has a burning question, please drop it and we may be able to get to it. But to kind of help us look toward what, our ultimate aim with this conversation, I just want to ask everybody, if you could decide how the world of event and festival organizing in Mafalala, in SA, across Africa would look after COVID, what's one positive change you'd like to see?
What is one positive change I'd like to see?
One positive change.
Curation, the level, the quality of experiences and the level of curation, needs to be more emphasized. I think it's interesting here, Kofi and Nandi saying here that some say festival industries have gone too big, especially in the US and Europe. Very true. I think the value of small in-person events will go up as like social distancing. That's the future I envision. I think that we're going to have much smaller, more curated experiences, and I'm hoping with this that people will get more innovative and they'll be super creative. But moreover, I think that there's a huge shift for us to start producing content. Too many of our properties were a moment in time. Too many of us weren't looking at how to build content and therefore revenue streams from that singular moment. And for me, that's taught me that, right now, if you had recorded some of those festivals and a high quality production, that's something that you could have been selling at this point. But a lot of us existed in a singular moment. And I think that was a real threat. That something that I'm saying, especially right now, I wished I'd produced more content. I wish I hadn't depended so much on that moment. Yeah, it's
kind of like an oxymoron though, because you kind of also live for that moment. So it's like hindsight, you would never know to think. For me, I don't know what the future is going to hold. All I know is that I want to use this opportunity to continue what we were doing with our training. So with this and knowledge and experience, being able to empower people with some knowledge and training and procedures behind the processes of building these events, so that when it comes to it, the level is that much higher, especially across the work that we do in Ghana, across Nigeria and the rest in South Africa. That's my focus, to be able to continue the training element so that by the time we are ready for these events, we have a wealth of experience that is just ready to just kind of get its teeth in and produce amazing content.
I guess after this, we'll definitely have more environment-friendly events as well. With all this pandemic, there's a lot of things about sanitizing and cleaning this, cleaning that. Probably we'll have more environment-friendly events, and I guess that's also one of the big issues with festivals and things like that. I also share the idea of how the curation is going to be present, and more we'll have the use of technology to produce our events, definitely.
Wow, well, thank you all so much. It's been amazing hearing your insights and reflections, just beyond what I even imagined this conversation might be like. I want to encourage the three of you, Ifeanyi, Nadu, Nandi, to drop your Instagram handles in the chat in case others want to connect with you after, if you'd like to continue conversations with people. And thanks all of you, all 43 of you who've been watching us, and please enjoy the rest of the conference.
Thank you for having us.
Sure.